Welcome one and all to another NerdSociety.com video. I'm your host, Ivan Crollo, as always, and today I will be giving you guys my review for the latest DC animated film, Assault on Arkham. Now, unlike the other two DC animated films that came out this year, such as Justice League War and Son of Batman, which are in this new DC animated film continuity that the studio is working on, Assault on Arkham is set in the Arkhamverse video games, such as Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Origins, and the upcoming Arkham Knight, and it is set a couple of years before the first game, Arkham Asylum, and several years after Arkham Origins. And the basic plot of the film is that the Riddler has information that Amanda Waller wants, and the Joker has several dirty bombs hidden throughout the city which are capable of releasing copious amounts of radiation throughout. And if these bombs go off, it will likely kill every single person in Gotham City. And since Batman is tearing up the whole town to find out where the hell the bomb is, Amanda Waller decides to bring in the Task Force X, or the Suicide Squad, comprised of Captain Boomerang, Killer Frost, Killer Shark, Deadshot, Harley Quinn, and the like, so that they can infiltrate the asylum and hopefully find both the data that Riddler has and to stop to stop the Joker's radioactive dirty bombs. And while I didn't hate the other two DC animated films that came out this year, Son of Batman and Jail War, I actually think I liked them a lot more than most people do these days. I do admit that they were very much flawed, and they really could have used better scripts and such to make out a better end product. But Assault on Arkham is easily the best one they've released this year, and probably the best one they've done since the Flashpoint Paradox. And really, what makes it so great is that this movie is basically Ocean's 11 if it had, a bunch of B and C list DC villains in the role. You get this, big epic montage where you kind of get introduced to how the characters work. It's like these couple-minute shots that just show you the personalities of the characters, the way they operate, and it really sets them up beautifully. And the film's whole tagline was that you're going to be rooting for the bad guys, and by the end of the film, I really was rooting for the Suicide Squad. These guys have great chemistry with each other. It's just great to see bad guys working on a team together. It's really different than how there are some similarities with how superheroes team up, because when most of these like costumed either heroes or villains, they kind of have this ego thing going on where they're really, firmly set in their own sorts of codes and their sorts of way of doing things, and these things usually conflict when you bring a bunch of them from different places of life together. And the Suicide Squad is kind of a reflection of that. It's kind of like if the Justice League was a bunch of bad guys who were maybe a bit fucked in the head. And that really shows throughout the film, and it's used for great effect. It's used, to create conflict within the group. It's used for comedy, and really, I just like the whole dynamics between the characters. I like that Harley is kind of like the most fun psycho of them all. She's having a great time, hanging out with these guys and kicking some ass. Killer Shark is kind of like the big kind of Hulk dude, if Hulk was like a man-eating monster, kind of like in the Ultimates. And Killer Shark's, brief romance with Killer Frost was actually really good. I would go so far as to say it's one of the cutest and one of the best done romances I've seen this whole year. And usually I'm a cold-hearted bastard who, despises romances because I think they're cringeworthy and cliche. But in this film, I think it really helped you care about these people, because if these guys were just acting like total pricks 100% of the time, it would be really hard to root for them. But I really like that the film really shows you that these guys aren't just psychotic assholes or murderers, that there is more layers to them, that they are people with problems, and these problems are things they just can't shake out of, and they constantly keep bringing them back into this world of villainy and such. That gets shown very well with Deadshot, with Killer Shark, especially with Harley Quinn, because the Joker plays a big part in the film's second half. And overall, it really is a Suicide Squad film. And now, a lot of people have said that this movie should have been called Suicide Squad Assault on Arkham instead of Batman Assault on Arkham. But really, even now, animation in the West still has this big stigma attached to it, where if it's animated in the traditional style, everyone thinks it's good, kid-friendly fun. They're never going to suspect there's going to be blood or swearing or even a bit of sex in this movie. And I'm going to get to all that stuff later on. But the stigma is still there, and despite the PG-13 rating, I still see a lot of people complaining about the level of violence in the films like Flashpoint, Jail, War, just Son of Batman, and certainly here in the early days when it was still a bit fresh on the stands. And and honestly, if you put an animated film called Suicide Squad: Assault on Arkham, I don't think it would have been as big of a draw. But when you put Batman there, Batman's a household name. Everyone knows him. Everyone buys his crap. And really, I think that it was smart for them to call this Batman Assault on Arkham. Even though Batman himself, he's not really in this movie. He kind of has a secondary job going on that's kind of paralleled with the Suicide Squad. But really, this is a film where the bad guys reign supreme, and, the kind of good guys are more of side characters, which I think works very, very well. And it's kind of an interesting take, because we really don't see these kinds of films, animated or otherwise, where you really get to see things from the bad guy's perspective, and the quote-unquote good guy is just a kind of a secondary dude. He's not like the big main focus of the film. And I know that some people are going to be pissed off that Batman's not a bigger character in this movie, but really, I was kind of weirded out by it at first, but once they really made me root for the Suicide Squad, I really just didn't give a shit, and I was having a blast. And what was I going to go with? Oh, yeah, the level of violence in this film. Personally, I'm one of those guys who's not really peckish about violence and blood or sex in movies, especially even animated ones, because, I've seen anime. I've seen some anime that are pretty fucked up, and mostly I'm desensitized to that, which could be a good or bad thing depending on who you ask. But I think that for this film, it really works that there is a bit more violence in it, because these are not nice people necessarily. I think that the only guy who could really classify as a quote-unquote good guy is Deadshot, because Deadshot's pretty much the most stable of them all. He's just there for the job. He's not there for the sick pleasure of killing. He's not there he is kind of there to save his own ass, but you can really tell that he's still kind of trying to make this group of misfits work and stuff, and he's pretty much the only guy who has his head on straight throughout the rest of the film. Everyone else has their own agenda, or is either too much enjoying into the carnage to really give a shit about that kind of stuff. But I really do think that in this kind of film, the level of violence is perfectly justified. I think that when you have a group of villains, it's okay to let them loose a bit more than you would, a superhero. If they made a Superman movie with this kind of level of violence, that would seem a bit weird, because Superman's not really a violent character. But when you have guys like Killer Frost, Killer Shark, Black Spider, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Harley Quinn, the Joker, when you have these kinds of more fucked up people, it really makes sense to let them loose and do some more stuff. And as for the sex thing, there's not really a lot of sex in here. There is a brief quote-unquote sex scene between Harley and Deadshot, and there are a couple of, side boob shots where Harley Quinn and Killer Frost, they pretty much use their sexual appeal to get the drop on people and to get the job done, which I really don't have a problem with. I actually think it's kind of smart. If you're a villain, you should use every tool at your disposal, and if that means showing off a bit of cleavage to get the drop on someone, go right on ahead, as far as I'm concerned, but that's just me. And so, yeah, I really didn't have a problem with the level of quote-unquote sex and violence in the film. I think it's perfectly fine with the tone of it, and I think that the movie does have a lot of great humor in it. There are just some beautifully dark and comedic moments in this movie where I just burst out laughing. A couple of them go to the Joker. I don't want to spoil what they are, but I just really laughed out loud several times throughout the movie. These guys just interact great. Their personalities are just comedy gold, and I think that the people who made the movie, they really used it to its full potential. It has a lot of great dark humor in it, and it really really helps show you that these guys aren't just completely evil scumbags. They're messed up people, but they're not necessarily evil in the strictest sense of the word. And what else? Another thing that I really liked is the action scenes in here. Now, one of my big problems with the DC animated universe is that they never really could make a big, compelling fight scene. Maybe it's the way the characters were drawn. Maybe it's the fact that they really didn't know how to do it. But this movie perfectly replicates that big, frenetic, super fast style of the Arkham games. The opening set piece is just Batman taking out an entire squad of dudes, and it looks exactly like it is in the game. He's fast, he's vicious, he uses a shitload of gadgets at his disposal, which is always good. And this translates to all the other characters. Everyone has a pretty good, action set piece that really shows why they're there and why they're sort of awesome. Killer Shark gets to fuck up a lot of dudes. Deadshot gets to, zigzag his bullet in 6 different directions and kill, 10 different guys. Captain Boomerang gets to zigzag his own boomerang, and he gets a couple good hits in. And basically, the action scenes are really fun. They're really brutal, which, again, feeds into the whole violence thing. But I think for this type of movie, it works. And this could be some of the best fighting choreography I've seen in a DC animated film. You really can't do this kind of stuff with, the big, hyper-powered superheroes. You can only really do this kind of fighting with the more human-level people, and I'm glad that they used that to pretty good effect. As for the voice acting is pretty damn awesome all throughout the movie. I don't think there's a single person who's at all miscast in the film. I do think that Kevin Conroy's kind of phoning it in at this point. In all honesty, I'm kind of sick of hearing him as Batman. I would prefer that they really... I mean, I understand why he is here, because it's an Arkham game, and you have to make it sound as much as the games as you can. But really, I'm a bit sick of Kevin Conroy as Batman, and I really wouldn't be against it if he finally chose to retire after Arkham Knight from the role of Batman. Troy Baker is awesome as the Joker. Like I said, his laugh is perfect. The way he goads Harley into trying to kill him is perfect. And his one great line is just delivered perfectly. I almost I almost exploded in laughter after I heard his one funny bit. And overall, I really got to say that, and I don't think there's a single one who's miscast here. I really like the new voice actor they got for Harley. She sounds, perfectly psychotic and yet kind of cute in a kind of dumb blonde kind of way. Deadshot is great. Captain Boomerang is great. I really like Killer Frost, and I really liked the sort of morbid innocence that was brought to Killer Shark, because he kind of sounds like a kid with a mumbling problem, and yet he's like this big monster with teeth that could rip a dude's spine inside out and make him eat it, and I thought that was pretty cool. And overall, I really don't have anything bad to say about the film. I really like the soundtrack, I like the tone, I like the voice acting, the action, and really, there really isn't anything for me to necessarily complain about. Is it one of the deepest movies ever? No. But is it a great fun ride where you get to see a bunch of, bad guys, be forced on a team, and then you see how they conflict, how they play off each other. And really, this is a film where you're going to root for the bad guys. Like when some of the people on the Suicide Squad died, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything, because if you're on a team known as the Suicide Squad, somebody is going to die for sure. And there were several moments where I was like, oh no, he's dead? Really? You killed him? And I was kind of sad. And really, I don't know if any movie, any comic book film so far has really made me really care about whether or not the bad guys die. Because usually when I'm sad that a bad guy dies, it's because the bad guy was so cool. I'm sad that he's dead because we're not going to be able to see him anymore. And it's kind of like here, and it's kind of like that here, but instead, there's the added factor of where I'm sad that we're not going to be able to see them back, but also because I even kind of got a connection with them, and I kind of grew to care about them, which made their deaths that much more sad, in my opinion. And overall, I think this is a brilliantly executed movie. I think this movie knew exactly what it wanted to be, a big, kind of darker villain action romp with Batman, kind of as a supporting character. Everything's there. It's got the style of the good Suicide Squad stories. It's got great humor, excellent voice acting, some of the best fighting choreography I've seen all year. Maybe even it's right up there with Winter Soldier as far as I'm concerned. Just excellent material overall. And really, this is a perfect addition to the Arkhamverse of video games. And if you're a fan of the video games, there's a couple of callbacks to what happened in the previous games, like Joker saying how he hired Deadshot during the events of Arkham Origins, which gets mentioned by both Deadshot, Batman, and Joker. There's even mentions of Joker putting bombs during Arkham Origins, and there's even some setup for later stuff. So overall, if you're a big fan of the Arkhamverse of video games, and you're going to see this, you're going to see plenty of Easter eggs and plenty of cool things that are going to really make you geek out. I probably missed a lot of them, but I did notice, some callbacks to maybe possible future events or things that have happened before. And overall, I got to give Assault on Arkham a pure A+. I thought this movie was great. I had just a fantastic time watching it. And really, if they want to make a sequel, another Suicide Squad film, I would be all for it, baby, because this is kind of movie I've kind of been waiting for a long time, because we live in the age of great bad guys. And seeing a movie where the bad guys are on a team together, just fucking shit up, is something that should be done, that should have been done already by now in the live-action verse. And I hope to God that the people who are doing the Sinister Six film, the live-action one, are going to see this and take some notes, because this is how you do a film starring a bunch of bad guys. And overall, they really nailed it this time. Like, a lot of people are saying they really redeemed themselves with this movie after the last two weren't as well received. And while I did like the last two a lot, I gotta say, this is the best one they've done since the Flashpoint Paradox. So yeah, a big A+ for me, guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed the review. And if you need a place where all your nerd needs can be fulfilled, such as fan fiction, interviews with comic book creators, reviews for TV shows, movies, comic books, and all that kind of stuff, you can check out nerdsociety.com down in the description below. I'm your host, Ivan Crollo, and I'll see you next time. Bye.